Welcome to a Shot in the Arm podcast. My name is Yvette Raphael, and we are reporting from AIDS 2020 in Canada, Montreal. And in this episode, we are talking women's leadership in HIV prevention. This conference is reporting on biomedical innovation, long-acting, and the appalling state of affairs when it comes to long-acting.
Injectables. Let's go.
Long-acting injectables and microbicide and the ring and all of these innovations that women and African women have participated in. And now that it's available, we have to stand in queues when it comes to access. Well, hell no, that is not going to happen. My guest today is the two fabulous women on my left and on my right. Loisa Saliso and, of course, should I say the dinosaur? Emily Bass, the queen of HIV and AIDS prevention. So my first question, why are we angry about access to women-centered HIV prevention? Why are we angry and why should we be angry?
It's a great question, and it's really a delight to be here with both of you. You know, look, the first reason to be angry is that HIV isn't over. We're in the midst of multiple pandemics, and we have incredibly high rates of HIV in key populations, but also in cisgender identifying adolescent girls and young women, appallingly, unacceptably high rates. And until we address HIV risk in adolescent girls and young women, we are not ending the HIV epidemic in any country and in any context. And we are angry because we have seen so little change for so many years. And I will speak for myself only. We are also angry because so often the products that are developed are not developed with plans that ensure that they get to the people who may want to use them as quickly as they possibly can. And the plans involve bringing the price down. The plans involve the research that is needed to understand how to deliver products, which products people want at different points in their lives. And in fact, what we get instead, which I know that you're working on very much right now, is we're told which products women and girls are going to want. And that really is not saying, we want to give you choice. It's saying, we're choosing what we want to pay for. We're choosing what you're going to get offered. We're choosing the options you're going to have to navigate your HIV risk and your reproductive health. And so we're angry because we don't think that anybody should be making those choices except women themselves.
Yes, thank you so much.
I 100% agree with you, Emily. And I think just to add on, your T-shirts, Yvette, really says it all. Can I just read this?
Yes.
Please. It's a quote by our late feminist and radical, Prudence Nobuntu Mabele, and it says, most of our resources are still controlled by men, and culture is still used as an excuse to perpetrate oppression. And that's exactly what you're speaking to, that we are angry because even when it comes to our bodies and our choices, it's still these men, these patriarchs. It's patriarchy, it's capitalism that's still controlling what goes into our body, what choices do we make. But also, I think we had this conversation yesterday where I was like, when we have to do the trials and the studies, because we really do want these methods, we really want to see, I believe in an HIV-free future. And so when these methods do pull through, or when they come up with a particular method, it's like we always avail ourselves for the study because we want to see a future that is actually free of HIV. And it kind of like, well, not kind of, it does really make us angry that when these studies are done and things are approved, then we always constantly have to go to the battle of actually fighting for the price to be, affordable. And yet we know where these studies are mostly happening, in low-income countries. So there's a lot for us to be angry about. The fact that we had goals which still have not been reached, almost 40 years, 30 plus years to in this pandemic of HIV. And I think coming from South Africa, in my country today, still the highest, most infected group is the vulnerable adolescent girls and young women between the ages of 14 to 25. And it's just really sad that we have to beg and we constantly have to fight. And I think even you, Auntie V, you feel like you can't have me still fighting the same fight you're fighting and still have our children fighting the same fight. So there's a lot of things that actually we are angry about. And yes, there's been developments and so forth, but it's men that are at the top making decisions for us, and that's a problem, and telling us what to choose. We don't want to be told what to choose. We know what we want in our bodies.
Yes, and I think you're speaking to something very important, which is the issue around choice, but also around who makes the decisions and who tells us what choices we need to make. But why is it so important for us at this time and stage? When I spoke to Winnie this morning, the executive director of UNAIDS, I actually mentioned that it is in a time like this, because you bring up feminism so well, that I think we're in a time where women have to lead, and this is an important stage in our life where we have to make this decision. But I would like to hear from both of you, why is it so important for us to fight for the ring right now and make sure the right decisions are made around the ring? Why is it so important? Anyone?
For me, I feel that I strongly believe, and I'm one of the fighters for the ring, that the ring really gives women their power back. It's a method that we have control of for, like, is it the first time?
Yes.
Absolutely. And, you know, and we have a slogan, my ring, my vagina, my choice. And being the people who are mostly, you know, infected, I think it's really a revolutionary and a powerful method that we can own and use for ourselves. And, you know, having done work in the community, which is one thing that I love to mention, is people thinking that when we want to use prevention methods or contraceptives or whatever, it's because you are consensually sexually active. But I mean, I remember having a young girl in a community back in South Africa, and this young girl said that, you know what, I really love this ring, and it's not because I'm sexually active, I'm a virgin, but I live in a country that is known as a rape capital, and live in a community where I hear stories of people being raped. And so knowing that I have this tool in my body, and God forbid, but this kind of, I'm not exactly immune to this thing happening to me, at least I know that the chances of me contracting AIDS, should such a thing ever happen, are actually, HIV, are actually very low. So there is really so many stories and things that actually show us that this gives young girls and women their power back.
The thing I would add to that, and I agree completely, is that the ring in particular, and I know that our listeners, our viewers are familiar with it, but we're talking about a vaginal ring, you know, somewhere around those, you know, the size of an earring, something like that, maybe a little smaller, but that you bend and you insert into your vagina, and it slowly releases an antiretroviral over the period of about a month, and it protects against, it reduces the risk of HIV. Yeah. It doesn't offer complete 100% protection, but it reduces the risk. Mm-hmm. Here is the thing about the ring, okay, is that a ring, many people will probably have heard about rings as a contraceptive. There are contraceptive rings at this moment, right? If we wanted to have a product that had both an HIV and a contraceptive potential in one product that you could just insert and forget about, as opposed to a pill, because there's also dual combination pills. But if you want, we sometimes call it a platform, although we're not putting a platform into our vaginas, we're putting a ring in our vaginas. But if you want a platform for both preventing pregnancy and reducing HIV risk, that's the ring. And so if we don't introduce a ring right now, we are losing the opportunity to learn about how to introduce a product that could do two things. And in many cases, adolescent girls and young women are more worried about whether or not they're going to fall pregnant as an immediate priority. Or that may be uppermost in their mind at some points in their lives than HIV. You guys can speak to this more. So, but I know from some of the research that has been done that that's the case. So one of the things that I'm most worried about if we don't see the ring introduction, and again, for people that may not have followed this really closely, part of what we're grappling with is because the ring doesn't offer 100% protection, there's a real sense of let's set it aside and let's move forward with other products that have much higher levels of protection. I think we'll probably get to the shot because there's issues there. But just for now, imagine, why would we set aside the one platform that we could really say, oh, we might be able to offer a ring that contracepts and reduces your risk of HIV, and we're not gonna learn how and when and where girls and women want to use that? Yes. It's such a missed opportunity. We can't miss it.
Yes, and to also mention that with the ring and that platform, we are thinking about a 90-day ring. It's just not only a multi-purpose technology, but it's also a 90-day ring with less time and burden for the young women to go to the clinic. So we cannot miss this opportunity as women, and we cannot miss this HIV prevention opportunity. But there's also something else, another long-acting method that's being spoken about and has really almost look like it's erasing all of the work that's being done around the ring, because we are talking about Cabernet, and it's something that everybody thinks it's going to be the solution, because all you have to do is give a jab to African women, or women, by the way, and everything is going to be fine. But we are not homogeneous. We are not a, women go through different stages. But I would like to know from you, Lolo, what role do you think Cabernet could play for African women? And what have you heard?
So I think I agree with you, Yvette. It seems like there's really kind of like erasure in a way with Cabernet and the Depiverin ring. And I think it boils down to the same thing that we've always been preaching: choice. Like you can't shove one method over the other, because, for example, I hate injections, and I definitely would not go for Cabernet because I don't like injectables. I can't deal with oral pills because it's taking them daily. I will absolutely forget. So a ring for me would sit in my vagina for like 30 days, and I'll be chilled and only worry about it once a month. So I think when it comes to Cabernet, they need to understand that it's not just about your method, and you have a responsibility to also push other methods, because what we're looking for is a basket of choice, and not just one basket of injectable PrEP or oral PrEP or whatever, but we want a basket of choice, because we can't act as if prevention methods are like a blanket that is one for all. Our bodies are different, our systems are different, and react to these methods differently. So I really feel that Cabernet has an opportunity as well to not just say, let's push for Cabernet, but also bring in the ring, understanding what the ring means to women. And that's my message to them. Y'all need to push the Depiverin ring as well, because not all of us like injectables, and you need to respect the fact that out there in this world, we need to have a basket of choice.
Yes, I think most importantly is that we want choice, but we also want to make researchers, funders, and everybody understand that it's not about putting one method against each other. We want choice. It's something that we have fought for so long. And we are also about the concerns around the storage concerns for long-acting. But most importantly, Emily, I remember the very first meeting that we had as the Community Advisory Board. And yeah, you were one of the founders of a very important movement that is very strong right now. And you kept talking about price. Nobody was listening. Now we are here today in 2022. 4 years ago, you asked, are we going to be open around the price of this product? And now the biggest issue with Caberlet's availability is price, is the issues that we've mentioned around testing, the algorithms around testing. Can you just talk a little bit about that and how that makes you feel as an advocate who was at the beginning in those meetings, and you actually warned us about us getting here today?
People that were here yesterday and people that may have been following have seen the anger around this, right? It took the stage at the opening ceremony. It's one of the key issues. So Yvette kindly, I think, referred to me as a dinosaur. I would love to have feathers. I'm not sure. No, I mean, look, I am old enough to have been at the Durban AIDS conference in 2000 when prices of antiretrovirals to save the lives of people with HIV were set exorbitantly high by drug companies that refused to collaborate with generic manufacturers and grant licenses so that generic manufacturers could make the drugs and sell them at affordable prices and support the technology transfer so that that could be done quickly. It is 22 years later. And the same thing is happening, right? We are struggling to have Vive, just before the conference started, the company that makes is the manufacturer, the originator of long-acting cabotegravir, did grant a voluntary license to the medicines patent pool, which means that it's possible for generic to be made. But it's going to take some years for that to come up to speed. That's not going to happen overnight. So the license, the way that it's granted, it actually says you can do this in some geographies in the world, but not others. So it's geographically restricted, and it's a longer timeline. At the same time, they have not yet brought the price down for their version of Cab-LA. So we have a potentially cheaper version now, in the future. Right now, we don't have price transparency, and we don't have it priced at the equivalent to generic oral PrEP, which is where it must be to come in alongside the other options that are being programmed in the places where rates of HIV are highest. So on the one hand, and it's a really maddening moment, because you have a public health establishment saying we only want to give women the injectable because they're unreliable and they take things out of their vaginas and they wash them and they wash their vaginas, and we do all sorts of things with our bodies that make public health people irritable, right? So that's annoying. So let's give them shots, which they can't do anything about, right? And let's talk just for a moment, if I may, about who gets given injectable contraceptives. And we've talked about this, for years. Yes. There's two of us here. One of us has been offered injectable contraceptives in her life, and one hasn't. And that has to do with race, ethnicity, class, right?
Yes, and also where you come from.
Yeah,
yes.
and country of origin. And so, moving towards injectables and saying, this is what we want to give to African women has a long history. It has a lot of meaning behind it. So injectables have meaning that we need to understand, whether they feel good or not good, right? In a historical context. That's a part of it. So on the one hand, it's a push to injectables, but on the other hand, those injectables are not priced in any way. So the demand, right, let's just state the demand really clearly. ViiV needs to bring the price of long-acting injectable cabotegravir, its drug, down to the equivalent of daily oral PrEP right now, so that there's a pathway to affordable access right now, while there's also a voluntary license, and that needs to have a geographic spread for the entire world. So we need both of those things. The fact that we're still doing these protests 22 years later, and there's some dinosaurs on that stage. There's a new generation, but there's also some of us have been doing this for a long time. The industry and capitalism do not concede without a fight, and we're just in it.
Yes, and mentioning that, Emily, I just have the vision in my head of pushing Lillian Mureko, who is onto that stage, and she was determined to be on that stage to fight for women, to fight for young women. And like you say, Lolo, I'm hoping that young people would not have to fight for this. Yeah. But we are in a space, and we right now at a time where the FDA decisions is not, FDA's decision is not, should we say the FDA's decision, or is it IPM's decision to not, to pull out of that, getting a decision from FDA? But we are sitting at the point now that that decision is affecting how the microbicides, or how the ring is going to be funded going forward. I mean, Lolo, you are young in the space. You hear you hear a lot about this. But I just want to hear your thoughts around what should we do right now? The FDA is not it's not accepting of the ring, and the decision is affecting us. We are not getting funding. As a young person, what should we do?
Oh, I think we're already doing it. I think what you said yesterday was very important in one of the meetings we sat in. You said that we didn't have to get to a point where we didn't have to do the things that we did in order for us to get to a point with you, the people we're having a meeting with, for us to get to this particular point of agreeing on certain things. And it just all stemmed to the point, Yoguti, of that we are just, why must women always fight, and why must we always fight for these methods? And I think with this particular one, listen, what do we need to do as advocates is really to continue pushing. I think we need to continue pushing, as exhausting as it is. We need to continue fighting with FDA, making these decisions and not wanting to fund. I mean, Global Fund, right? They are on board in funding the ring, but obviously it will not be enough. So I don't know. It really makes me very angry to even think that what do we need to do, because do we have to get to a point where we have to think about what do we need to do?
Yeah.
And it leaves me without an answer, because I'm like, do we have to think about these things all the time?
So to you, Emily, thanks so much, Lola. But to you, Emily, I mean, the FDA's decision was made, but here's the thing. Can PEPFAR do nothing? I know you have extensive knowledge of PEPFAR, right, the systems, and basically the White House as it is. And we look to you for some advice at most of the time. But does PEPFAR have a leg to stand on? What can PEPFAR do to ensure they actually help African women to fund the ring?
Right. So PEPFAR responds to country level demand. So I think there's a couple things to say. One is the FDA is not the only regulatory authority in the world, right? I mean, and right now we are grappling with an insane, preventable, and abhorrent monkeypox outbreak in the United States, where one of the sources of delay is that the FDA insisted on inspecting a manufacturing line that the European Medicines Agency had already inspected and cleared, and lack of mutual recognition in this case led to an enormous delay and immense amount of pain and suffering. So I think looking at the role of regulatory authorities as facilitators and barriers and looking for ways around them is important. Stringent regulatory authorities and the regulatory authorities in South Africa, for example, in other countries, can issue their own opinions. The European Medicines Agency can, so we have to look for pathways around. And we have to recognize that PEPFAR, which you asked about specifically, responds to country demand. And what we have heard, unfortunately, in PEPFAR countries is governments are saying, oh, we don't really want the ring. So unfortunately, the patriarchy is established everywhere, right? If a minister of health says to the PEPFAR country coordinator, or says to Dr. John Nkengasong, the new head of PEPFAR, you know what I need right now is PEPFAR to support a multi-product platform in my country. I have heard that we need the ring, and we need the injectable, and we need sexual and gender-based violence services, and we need it integrated, right? You know, and this is what I need, or 10 ministers of health said that, PEPFAR would respond. So we have to think about demand cycling up and other regulatory alternatives. And where PEPFAR won't move, we go to the Global Fund.
Yes. To that, I just had a thought right now that to what I was saying, that it's also the fact that this pandemic, which is about lives, is also been made so political, you know, and that's why we are in this position where Yvette is asking what we need to do. It's like, is it profits over lives or lives over profits? And if it was lives over profits, we wouldn't be asking these kinds of questions. The ring would have come through, approved. Women are shouting that they want the ring. It should not be taking them all this fussing and whatnot to make it available when we say we want it.
Yes, and most definitely. I mean, you say it so well, Emily, that PEPFAR should listen to the country demands, but actually it is the other way around, because we do not have that confidence. Our political leaders in country most of the time look to PEPFAR to tell them what to do, and because we're always going to these spaces with a begging bowl. And I'm glad that you clarified that for us. But most importantly, broadly, what do we think about the activism today? I mean, yesterday you mentioned, Emily, just how the stage went, but where are we with activism for women's prevention, but with just HIV activism overall? Where do you think we are? Yes, you, Emily. I know.
I mean, look, I think we need to look at the ways that protest was crucial and the ways that it was also familiar. That we are in a I don't want to say a cycle, but we are in a give and take. Vive knows that this is going to happen. Vive will probably give an increment. That we are in some ways in a bit of a everybody is doing the playing roles that are somewhat familiar. And I don't mean to trivialize it. And in fact, it's infuriating that we have to do this. But there is a way that we are moving within a system where there is some sense of we're going to fight this and eventually we will win something. Maybe not the full thing, but incremental, revolutionary, right? But if you pull back the camera just a little bit wider, and that's frankly what I'm really concerned about at this conference, is you would not walk in here and read the program and walk into the sessions I've been in, frankly, and know the impact that COVID-19 has had on economies, on women's control of their bodies, on girls in school, on HIV. I mean, UNAIDS has issued statements, so let's be clear, there's been news, but in the sessions, it's as though none of that has happened. And so I think that our activism needs to be both the things that we have done and must continue to do, unfortunately, because that is how power concedes, but we've got to start to figure out what is the way that all of that expertise that sits within HIV, how do we propel more systemic change? And it's a lot to put on shoulders. It's a lot to put on shoulders. But honestly, we're in a moment right now where the system is failing, and we've got to take it on, because who else is going to?
Yes, but on a much lighter note, what is the things that we are liking around Montreal? I know, Emily, you just got here, but I know you are connected. You are in the groups. You are hearing what's going on. What is the things that you're liking about Montreal? And I'll come back to you, Lolo, and you can start thinking about that.
When you walk into the conference center, there's like a giant set of things that I think they mean to be pink trees, but they look, for those of you that aren't going to be in the conference center, they really just look like giant blood vessels. And I'm like, I don't know if they made the decor for us, or, so that's one of the things that I love, is this forest of blood vessels, which is like someone who thinks a lot about cells and bodies. I'm like, oh, thank you. I feel so comfortable here. And I really love the park outside.
Definitely. Lolo, this is your first AIDS conference, and international AIDS conference. You went to the South African one, but tell us, what is it that you are liking about Montreal? Apart from the safety, Lolo just takes pictures at night to show just how safe it feels in this country, because we come from the gender-based violence capital of the world. And apart from that, Lolo, just tell me, what are you liking about Montreal and the conference?
That is my takeaway when I go home, is how safe it is. It's like, I realized how traumatized we are because of where we come from. And so seeing women just walking, and people just walking at 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, it's like, I said to Yvette, I'm like, oh gosh, I need to start looking into moving to Canada or to Montreal, because this is freedom, you know. But apart from that, I think with the conference, today, I like the Global Village. I think the energy there is just really needed. The activism, the vibe. I think it's been 2 years, and we really needed to actually come together again. And for me, that's so important. What the sessions, I agree with you, Em. It's like nothing has really changed. And for me, it highlights the problem there is, what we're doing here, more talk shops and nothing really happening. But also another highlight to me, with the building, there's like that part by the Global Village where it's like LGBTQIA colors. And it's like, I love it. So when you're standing inside and looking outside, the sky looks purple, yellow, orange, and I'm like, rainbow. So I really love that. It really just, there's a nice energy to it.
Yeah, definitely the Global Village, the highlight for me. It's where the conference is at. Yeah. And I think that's where community really show their work. And I think everybody should just go to the Global Village, enjoy just the culture of the Global Village. And I am happy and very excited that I get to see my comrades after so long. I go to the PWA lounge and I see everybody is still alive. And that for us is important, that our comrades have survived COVID, although we were made to feel as if we are going to be the targets. But that's it for this episode. And thanks to Eric Espera, our director, and Ben Plumney, our producer. Have a great day and stay safe. Thank you, you too.